Welcome to Generations, a show which helps people 50 and better lead happy, healthy, and productive lives. Here's today's moderator, Nadia Giordana.
Hello and welcome to Generations. I'm Nadia Giordana and I'll be the moderator for today. I want to first introduce my co-hosts, Gloria Van Demeltrot.
Thank you, Nadia. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I just love it when you're here.
Oh, we have fun.
I know it. And we have subbing for one of our missing co-hosts today, Lynn Garthwaite.
Hi again.
You've been on the show before.
I've subbed before, and it's a fun time.
Yeah, it's always
Great to
when
have
you
you.
get to come.
Yeah, thank you.
And we have a very special guest today, Barbara Deese. Barbara, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me.
And Barbara, you are among a couple of different things, a mystery writer, but you are also one of the first, or the first, female air marshal in the United States. Tell us a little bit about that before we start talking about your books and other interesting things that have happened in your life.
Okay. I had graduated college thinking I would go into the Foreign Service. I missed the oral interviews, so I had to find something to do. I decided to look for a government job, a different government job, to get my foot in the door until my real life started. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
And I interviewed for this job. The woman that interviewed me said, "We do have this thing called air marshal, but it's not really for girls.
Oh.
You'd have to carry a gun and travel a lot." And I said, "Oh, tell me more."
Yeah.
So that's how it began.
Yeah.
And you were very young at that time, I'm assuming.
Yeah, 21.
Right out
About
of
20,
college,
21?
yeah.
Okay.
And at the time, they were beginning to introduce women into that. It was a hard sell for some people.
Yeah.
It was a pretty sexist environment at the time.
Sure.
Most of the guys I worked with were wonderful, but there were a few that just, they didn't want to be around women who carried guns because we're so emotional, you know?
And in those days, most police departments didn't have female
Yeah.
officers either. That's
Yeah.
evolved quite a bit too. So I can see how that was the mindset in that day.
Yeah. But I did it, and I think I did it well, and
How many years did you
just
do that?
1 year we were replaced by metal detectors.
Oh my goodness.
Replaced by metal
Yeah,
detectors.
and now they've brought them back for the very specific kind of terrorist threats.
Yeah.
Right.
When I was working, we weren't looking so much at groups of people. It was more, you know, somebody homesick for his home country who decided to take a plane to
Yeah.
Cuba or
Yeah.
whatever. And it was in the days of D.B. Cooper.
Oh, wow.
yes.
Interesting.
Oh, yes.
Did you actually have any interesting encounters?
I did not.
That's
No.
good.
In fact, the training was interesting. It was interesting to say that what I did. The job itself was quite boring. You
Sure.
just had to sit there and not get too involved in a book or
Sure.
a conversation or anything for hours and hours on airplanes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's probably why you did it for only a year?
Well, they ended the program for a while.
Right.
Oh, I see.
Right.
Yeah.
Did any of the foreign service interests that you had in the past, any of the things that you were interested with regard to that, work their way into your books?
No, they did not.
Oh, okay. So that was a lot of years ago too that you were
It
looking
was.
into that. Were you looking into like being a diplomat or something in that
Just
regard?
some job within the embassy. I didn't
Okay.
know, but it was a chance for me to. I liked languages.
Okay.
And I liked travel.
Right.
It just seemed, I don't know, kind of romantic in its own way. Now we find out that the embassies are not necessarily safe places.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Right.
Tragically.
Well, and briefly before we started the show, we were chatting with you,
Mm-hmm.
and you were widowed at a very young age. That must not have been long after your air marshal
No,
experience.
it wasn't. In fact, I married my partner. He was a laid-off airline pilot at the time, and 2.5 years into our marriage, I had just found out I was pregnant when he was killed in a military plane crash.
Oh,
And my whole world just kind of
Sure.
fell apart. But I had this daughter to look forward to,
Right.
and it kept me going one foot ahead of the
And
other.
family in the area to also?
I did have family
That
in
helps.
the area.
Yeah.
a big adjustment, though, to
Yeah.
regroup and start life all over again.
Yeah,
What did you do after that? Your daughter was born, and how did you restart life? That I think a lot of people want to know that.
That's a good
We
question.
have traumatic things that happen. What do we do? How do we deal with it?
During the pregnancy, because I had 7 months before she was born, and I couldn't really get a job. I mean, people did not want to hire somebody who might get pregnant,
Exactly.
much less somebody who already was.
Yeah.
I took 7 different community ed classes. I kept busy. I took myself out to lunch once a week, just me and myself.
Good for you.
And I got to looking forward to that time for myself.
Yeah.
And I also went to a movie by myself every month.
That's good.
Just-
It's scary sometimes to do that, to kind of put yourself out there and show to the world I'm by myself today.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
And we had just moved back to the Twin Cities when that happened, so I didn't have friends around.
Okay.
I made friends within some of those classes.
Right.
It worked out okay,
Yeah.
but sometimes it's just a decision.
Right.
You know, I'll do my crying, howling, whatever it is at
Right,
home.
right.
And I'm going to go out and be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought that was honoring my husband too, to handle it that
Absolutely.
way.
That's exactly what he would want. So good for you.
And now you are a mystery writer.
I am.
Can you tell how that came about? How did it happen? How did you move from one career to another, and how did you get there?
My first serious writing was not a mystery. I had been widowed 5 years when I remarried. My second mother-in-law, my first mother-in-law saw somebody else raising her granddaughter, and in her grief, she just acted out rather
Wow.
badly for the situation, and wanted to get custody of my daughter, which of course didn't happen. There was no merit to that, but it just kind of wrecked the relationship.
Yeah.
And I was so hurt and angry and confused by that reaction. I don't think I fully understood that it was grief.
Yeah.
It just looked like a tantrum,
Yeah.
you know, an adult tantrum.
Yeah.
Anyway, I started writing about my feelings, and pretty soon it turned into kind of a plot.
Oh.
And I started putting things in the third person and changing a few facts.
Right.
I couldn't change the reality of my life,
Right.
but I could change that novel.
Yeah.
And it had become a novel by then. A novel of revenge, I have to say.
There you
It
go.
wasn't pretty.
It's a healthy way to do it, though.
Right. Right.
Yeah, you kill people in books.
It's much better than
So in that respect, I suppose there was that element of mystery writing in it. It never will see the light of day
Okay,
because it was too self-righteous. I
Oh.
didn't understand anybody's point of view but my own pain at the
More of a
time.
cathartic act.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Something you had to do. You had to get it down
Yeah.
on paper and set it aside.
But what interestingly, a few years later, I rewrote several chapters from my mother-in-law's point of view.
Oh.
I cried and cried writing that because I suddenly felt the pain that was
wow.
making
That's-
her.
Did you get in
behave that
touch with her at that point?
way. We stayed in touch, but it was very tenuous.
Yeah. Okay.
It's hard to get past some of those things.
Yeah, it is.
But it's not uncommon to have writers put their own anger and grief and whatever into their own stories.
That's
so
the truth.
yeah.
That's a very healthy way to deal with anger, and I work a lot with helping people write life stories, and it's a catharsis to get that out, and sometimes, many times, no one's ever going to see that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But this inspired you then and spurred you on to start writing mysteries. Tell us how that happened.
I had been writing a different novel after that first novel of revenge. I started writing about a Vietnam vet, a man who passed himself off as a Vietnam vet.
Okay.
He wasn't. He was a draft evader.
Okay.
And I put him in the position of, in his need to run away from this, he wound up with post-traumatic stress and an injury, and it's kind of a novel of redemption, I think. That
Yeah.
Did that ever get published, or you're holding on to that one too?
I'm holding on to that because at the time I was finishing up on it, I was told, you're not going to sell a mainstream novel. The market was very skittish,
Okay.
you know, at the time of the financial
Financial crisis
recession.
time. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was told, just sit on it for a while, write some genre fiction. And I thought, no, I don't want to write genre fiction.
Right.
But then my book club was on retreat in Wisconsin. It's an old hunting lodge sitting on a cliff overlooking a waterfall. It's so beautiful.
Sounds like a great setting.
Yep, we go there every year. And that particular year that started this murder at Spirit Falls, we had a storm move in, and we were way out there where you couldn't get cell phone reception. We didn't have TV, radio, anything. And all of a sudden, this crack of lightning hit the tree right next to where we were sitting.
Yeah.
The power went out, and we sat there in the dark at first, and by candlelight, kind of talking about what if. Here we are in this remote setting.
yes.
Ooh. So by morning, my friend Dorothy Olson and I said, this would make a great murder mystery.
Yeah. Super. What a great start. And started
Yes.
among friends, too.
Right.
So.
And then the really fun part about that was that we told the rest of the book club and said, if you want to participate, just send a little bio of a character you want in there. And they did.
Oh, nice.
And we put them in, and it really made it fun.
Oh, cool.
It worked. It worked. So how many of you actually wrote this book then?
Well, nobody else was doing the writing. Dorothy had not written before. She wanted to be involved. We brainstormed a lot.
Okay.
And she was very much a part of it. Her husband was diagnosed with dementia, and she just couldn't,
Right.
devote the
Her life
time.
was going in a
Got
different
in the
direction.
way of
Yeah.
getting really more involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, her name is on there because she is a part of it. But then she couldn't keep going with the series.
Right. But it was good to have somebody to bounce ideas off of.
It still
to
is.
get started.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we're still friends.
Yeah. So I
So
know
you-
you worked on that for quite a while, so it was your baby for a while.
It was.
How did it feel when you first had it in your hands?
It was so nice to be done.
Yeah.
And actually, it's nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
You don't want, you say it's my baby. Yeah. You don't want somebody to tell you your baby's ugly.
Right.
That's right.
Or
That's
uninteresting.
right.
Or yeah.
How long did it take to get that first one out?
Not very long. A friend of mine, also a writer, Wally Roars, he had won awards with his first book, but his second book was too long after his first one, so he was struggling to get a publisher. And he called me one day and said, I've got a contract. I don't know what to think of these people. Would you just go with me and be another pair of eyes and ears? So I did. And it was North Star Press.
Oh, yeah.
They were very quirky people. We had an hour conversing with them, sitting in the middle of a circle with their backs to us, and they would turn around and ask us questions as
It's a
they
little
worked.
different.
It was very strange.
Yeah.
But after an hour, Wally said, I'm going to sign, and I said, do you have 10 minutes? I want to pitch my book.
Yeah.
And they took it.
Oh, so just kind of circumstances
Fantastic.
led to that.
Yeah.
You were in the right place at the right time.
Right.
So.
Right. And they do know what they're doing. It
Right.
was just,
They've published many books. And I assume they've published the other ones too.
they did. And I'm not sure. I'm working on number 5, and I might have to self-publish that because they've had a death in that publishing family, and so
Yeah.
I'm not sure what will happen
Right.
next.
So you're working on the 5th one. Oh, fun.
Yep.
Barbara, something that I found on your website or information that we saw on you earlier talked about your childhood and your family environment. It sounds fascinating that you read with each other, read
We
to
did.
each other after dinner each evening.
Yeah.
I just think that is a wonderful
That's
thing.
a great idea.
It
Tell us
really
about
was
that.
a good upbringing that way. And, I think telling stories and writing them down are very much the same. family of storytellers. My grandma used to gather us around, and all of us little kids would just sit there in awe for an hour while she sang and told stories.
Wow.
I'm sure that developed the love of a story.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And then, you know, we had a bookshelf right next to the dining room table. So after dinner, we would look up things that had been discussed at the dinner table in the encyclopedias on that shelf.
Yep.
It was look it up in your Funk and Wagnalls.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
Long before Google.
But we would take turns reading Kipling and Twain, and I don't know if you know the Glenn Cannon series from World War II.
No, I don't know.
But they're also very quirky, weird sense of humor and dialect and humor. Just
Who
a
chose
lot.
the books you read?
I suppose my folks did. Yeah.
How many siblings did you have? How many were in the family?
There were 4 kids.
So it would go around the table, people would take
Right.
turns reading. And that's a great idea.
Isn't it?
I just think it's fabulous.
It's-
Are any of them writers?
My sister is a librarian, and she has just gotten her cards out to be a book editor and has gotten a few jobs. No, the other 2 aren't writers, but we're all storytellers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and probably avid readers.
And probably all
Oh, yeah.
readers.
And
And
readers.
read anything.
Yeah.
What a wonderful start.
Yeah.
That is
Isn't it?
really
When I talk to
fascinating.
kids about my children's books, they often ask how I got started, and I said I always say I started because I was such a reader. You know, I mean, when you read a lot,
Yes.
you just kind of almost naturally are drawn to wanting to write a story yourself. So I
Of
think
course.
that's a natural progress. Yeah. So good for
It
you.
is, that is, a love of reading to me is one of the most important
Yes.
things that you can help a child learn to do. And I don't know how it happens. I loved to read. It's like my life began when I was able to curl up in a corner with a book and hide in a whole new environment and characters, learn about people that I wanted to know about. It was just a whole new world.
Oh, for sure.
And many of my grandchildren, I have lots of grandchildren, many of them are wonderful readers, love to read, but some don't. And I don't know what happened there.
Well, they may pick it up later. I mean, that sometimes happens, that it's a later thing. But
I can really relate to the encyclopedia part of being a child, because we had a set of encyclopedias and a couple of other sets of books that was my internet.
yeah.
That was my resource for doing schoolwork and also for a lot of, I just enjoyed reading. I actually, the things in the encyclopedia that I wasn't even looking up,
Right.
you flip to the next page, well, this is interesting.
Right.
So I can relate to that.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Natural curiosity leading from one thing to the other.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
But the other part of that, when you talk about reading to little kids, reading to infants, I can still kind of have a memory of sitting on my dad's lap and hearing his baritone voice just kind of rumbling in his chest. And it was
Yeah.
comfort,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know?
That's right.
Beyond the words.
Right.
Yeah.
And when a child can sense when a parent or an adult is very interested in something too, so
Right.
they kind of naturally. I mean, as a child, I remember I wanted to do everything my dad did, and that's why I'm so interested in sports these days, because that's what I did with my dad.
Oh, sure.
But as a parent reading to a child, if the child sees how interested you are in stories, they're going to almost naturally pick it up.
Yeah.
So,
True.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I did as a young mother was when I did read books and I picked ones that were favorites from my childhood. Of course, we
Yes.
do that.
Sure.
You know, even though there's newer, more modern stuff
Right.
out there, you pick those favorites because of the joy you got from that. Sometimes you're a little disappointed if they don't feel the same excitement and joy
Right.
with that, but they pick it up somewhere else and
Right.
pick a
Right.
different series, and the effect is still the
Yeah.
same.
I think The Secret Garden was my favorite. Do you remember The Secret
yeah.
Garden?
Pretty
My
classic.
favorite.
I loved that book as a
Yeah.
child. That was
And for me, it was A Wrinkle in Time.
a wrinkle
one
in
too.
time.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
And
good.
Nancy Drew's story.
Yes.
Oh, Nancy
And the Hardy Boys. I read
Oh,
all those
yeah,
too,
them
so.
too.
And yeah, and leading to mysteries, you were a mystery reader, I assume, before
Oh,
you?
yes.
Yeah, and that's kind of a natural thing too. You write what you want to read.
Right.
So.
Even though I resisted doing genre fiction, it's really rewarding, and I think it's the most popular genre anyway. So I wasn't trying to sell to the public. I was just trying to write what was fun.
But do you
was
get
fun.
good response? Do you do book fairs or things like that where you interact with, and what kind of responses do you get?
I get really, really good responses. I write about 5 women who are in their 50s.
Okay.
And they...
It's the same characters in all
throughout,
books? Okay.
And they call themselves the No Ordinary Women. They have formed a book club, and they kind of joke about, being super women.
Yeah.
And then they have to live up to it a little bit. They're not fantastical, they're just real people. But I see that all the time with especially women at that 50-year point and beyond, that they're fearless.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
And they've been through stuff, You can't get to this age without having your heart broken and be disappointed and
rise from the ashes over and over again.
Have to reinvent yourself.
Yeah. And women also at that age, at our age, are less likely to care what other people think. And so just plow forward, just go forward.
I love that term, fearless.
Yeah.
That just really struck me. Are you in a book club now?
I am. It's the same book club. I think it's been about 25 years.
Wow. Basically the same people the whole time? Yeah.
Well, there was a turnover at first, but we've settled into, there are 11 of us now.
Okay.
And even though one has moved to New Hampshire, she's the one with the cabin in Wisconsin where this whole thing started. So
Still stay in touch with the way
And still
internet
see her every
is
year
now.
at the cabin?
every year she hosts there.
Oh, nice. Yeah, don't let her sell that.
No,
It'll
no.
change everything. So,
What about research? What kinds of research do you do? How deep do you go into coming up with an idea and then researching how real it is?
Yeah, all of these are local places. Even though Spirit Falls is a fictitious name, it represents a real place. And so I described it and took photos and wandered the property and all that.
Right.
But I do a lot of research online. I talk to people. I listen to people in restaurants or whatever.
Dialogue.
To get the dialogue.
do you do any forensic research, like as far as if you murder somebody with a poison, are you checking out?
Yeah, I don't want to get any of that wrong.
Yeah.
Because the readers will tell me if I do.
Yeah.
Absolutely, they do.
Yeah. In the 4th book, Spirits of Pepin, that also started on a book club trip with my friends on a cabin cruiser. And I saw a boat that was kind of meandering around the lake and wondering if anybody was really in charge and knew what they were doing out there. So that got me thinking, what if somebody's dead?
Right.
Oh, sure.
So I went back to Lake City and Rochester, took photos and videos and walked where the characters would be walking. And
Fun. Yeah.
What
And
would
some
you
of the
see?
details about the body of water that's down
Right.
there.
Right,
Yes,
right.
yes.
So you could describe it well. So that's great. And it makes it fun for you too, I imagine.
Yeah. And the 2nd book is Spirited Away. And Gloria, you talked about working with people, was it in hospice? Or
In hospice, yes.
helping them tell their stories. And one of the characters, Robin, is a photographer. And she goes to the nursing home and gets stories of people. And
Wonderful.
yeah.
Very nice. Have you been tempted to set one of your stories in some exotic place so you have an excuse to visit?
No.
Okay. You want to keep it home?
Well, I do, but I also think sometimes you get hooked on a TV show or a series, and you just see that somebody has done exactly that, and it seems opportunistic rather than natural.
Right. Right. Doesn't feel heartfelt or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Like, oh, this is going to pay for my trip.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Good. Yeah.
Well, what about if people were interested in learning more about you and your writing, maybe even your book club? I don't know if your book club or writers group has a website, but you must have a website.
I do. It's noordinarywomenmysteries.com.
No Ordinary Women
I
Mysteries.
love that name, No Ordinary Women.
And I don't think I fully answered your question. You asked about feedback from readers, and what it's the best compliment when people say, "I identified with your characters. That one was like my sister, my great aunt, my weird uncle, you know." And they say, "I finished the book and I miss those people. So keep writing."
I know
they're
that
wonderful.
feeling.
Yeah.
I've had books like that where you think, I just can't wait to see them again. You know, so good for you for writing a series because people
Yeah.
want to see them again.
They do.
Yeah.
So now I knew I was going to be writing 5 books because there are 5 women in this book club.
Oh, okay.
And each one takes a more prominent role in each of the books. I don't know for sure what I will do after that.
Right.
It'll come to you.
It will come, a new series or
It could
something
be.
else.
It could be a new series or a spin-off. Somebody suggested I should write book number 6 in which each of the women confesses to one of the murders in the previous books.
That's a fantastic. Although that would mean you solved it or they solved it incorrectly the first time
Right.
through. So that is hysterical.
What a
though.
twist that would be.
Oh, I love that
Well,
idea.
with regard to feedback that you get from people, does that come via emails or letters? How do you get most of your feedback?
I get comments on the Facebook or on the website, also on Facebook. I have people come up to me, they know me, I don't know them, and they say, "I bought this at an art fair and I read it and I've come back for more and this is what I like about it." I get letters and cards too. I mean, it's not like tons a week,
Right.
but oh man, that's good
It's
stuff.
just nice to hear.
Doesn't that
Do
feel
you get
good?
people bringing you plot ideas?
Oh yes.
The bane of the mystery writer, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody's got an
Or
idea.
someone will say, "I've got the name for your next book."
Right.
Yeah, that
Yep.
happens a lot.
Yeah.
Or they want to be in the book and they never want to be
Yes.
the good guy. They want to be the
Yes.
dead one or the bad guy.
Or the butler.
Yeah.
Yeah, or the villain, because that's so much more.
Oh, it's fun.
And interesting
Right.
than the hero
Yeah.
or heroine.
Do people in your book club try to pick themselves out in your characters?
You know, we've had some conversations about that. I've consulted, because I said that each person suggested a character in there. I have asked them, I'm thinking of doing such and such, am I going to step on any toes? You never know. I could be writing about somebody whose child has, and that's not in the book, but somebody whose child has really run off the rails,
Right.
and then find out that the person who'd suggested that character is going through a real tough time with kids.
Right, which you
Check
didn't
it
know,
out.
but yeah,
And I want to make sure I don't do that.
good for you. Yeah.
Yeah. And yet I have to represent, we've got a couple of widows now in my book club that happened in the last few years. And I think that's just a stage of life that you need to
Yeah.
address.
Right.
It affects things.
Right.
Well, Barbara, this has been fascinating
Yeah.
hearing how you write your books and all the interesting things that have happened in your life. And I want
you.
to thank my co-host, Gloria Van Dimmeltrot, for being here today.
Thank you. I'm delighted to have been part of this.
And Lynn
You've been
Garthwaite.
wonderful.
This was fascinating. This is wonderful. Thank you for having
And of course,
me.
Barbara again,
Yeah.
thank you for being here.
Oh,
And maybe we'll get you on the show again another time.
I would enjoy that. Thank you so much.
And thank you to our audience for watching us today on Generations. We'll see you next time.